Good evening, members. Sorry, it's now 7 o'clock, so I'm going to open this meeting. There are no fire drills planned. If the fire alarm does activate, which is a flashing siren with a which is a continuous siren with a flashing red light, please leave the building immediately following the fire exit signs. We've had an apology for absence from Councillor Camp, and Councillor Thornton is here as a substitute for Councillor MacArthur. The first item on the agenda is the election of the chairman. Do I have any nominations? Councillor Perry-Cole.
Thank you. I would like to elect Councillor Harrison as
Thank
chairman.
you. Is that seconded? Councillor Thornton. Are there any other nominations? No, in that case, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, members, for your renewed confidence and faith in me. Can I have nominations for Vice Chair, please? Councillor Balford. Lily.
Councillor Glynis Darrington.
Is that seconded?
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there any further nominations? Thank you. That is Councillor Glynis Darrington, duly elected as Vice Chair. Thank you. Just welcome to those returning back to Health and Housing, and also to new members for the committee for this term. I hope you find the meeting interesting. Minutes, item number 3. Minutes to agree the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 3rd of March of this year as a true record. Could I have a show of hands for those that were there and are happy with that? Thank you very much. Councillor Stretfield.
Yeah,
sorry.
just one apology for absence. I think.
What, that's not on the minutes?
I think we jumped ahead in terms of
The agenda.
the agenda.
Oh, you're on the agenda. Sorry. Sorry, I think Phil, sorry, Phil, my brain was a bit frazzled there. Phil had already said Councillor Camp and Councillor MacArthur was being substituted by Councillor Thornton. Is there another? Oh, that's fine. So the minutes are correct, so they'll be carried forward. Thank you. As a true record. Item number 4, declarations of interest. Any interest already not registered? Nope, lovely. Item number 5 is actions from the previous meeting, and I believe both items, there were 2 items and both of those were circulated after the meeting. Is that correct? That is, isn't it? Thank you. Swiftly on to item number 6, update from portfolio holder. Councillor Cole.
Chairman, I'm grateful and congratulations on your appointment as chairman for this committee for the next year. I'm pleased to present an update on the work taking place across my housing and health portfolio. As members will know, this is one of our most challenging service areas, with demand increasing and external pressures continuing to mount. But despite this, the team has delivered strong progress and nationally recognised achievements over the past year. Members will be aware that demand for social housing in Sevenoaks remains significantly higher than the supply available. The review of our housing allocation policy has therefore been timely. The aim is clear: to ensure that the homes that do become available are allocated fairly and effectively. The consultation on the draft housing allocation policy runs until the 24th of July 2026. The survey and focus groups are available for the members, partners and residents. Please can I encourage you all to take part in the consultation and complete the survey, which can be found on the Council's website. Our homelessness and rough sleeper strategy, adopted in 2023, continues to guide our approach to prevention, intervention and long-term solutions. Demand has increased sharply this year. Case complexity is growing, placing additional strain on teams and resources and on temporary accommodation budgets. Contributing factors include the cost of living, rising rents, Section 21 evictions, landlords leaving the sector, domestic abuse and family breakdown. Despite this challenging landscape, the Council won the Kent Housing Group Award for delivering services for vulnerable people for our work on the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance, recognition of the team's commitment and professionalism. With the publication of the new National Homelessness and Rough Sleeper Strategy, our strategy and action plan has been reviewed and will be presented to you tonight for the draft strategy to go out for consultation. The Renters' Rights Act represents one of the most significant changes to the sector in years. The new investigatory powers that came into effect last December are already strengthening our ability to act against rogue landlords. However, the additional duties, particularly around licensing and enforcement, will increase pressure on our private sector housing team. We anticipate an uplift in inquiries, especially around damp and mould, which is already a high volume area for us. We have received government new burdens funding and have recruited a senior private sector housing officer and a private sector housing intelligence officer to support this work. With the changes in legislation, our private sector housing enforcement policy has been reviewed and will be presented to you tonight for the draft policy to go out for consultation. Sevenoaks Landlord Forum events were held in February and June 2026 and championed by myself, resulting in new landlords agreeing to work with the council, making an overall total of 149 landlords registered with SDC. Landlords provided feedback at the forum on what they would like to see in future offers through our Sevenoaks Landlord Hub packages, and each package offers different incentives, including rent in advance, rent deposit, and hero service support. Turning to housing standards, our private sector housing team continues to play a crucial role in supporting tenants living in poor conditions. Where hazards are identified, we work with landlords to secure repairs, and we take enforcement action when needed. Our priority remains ensuring safe and decent homes across the district. A consultation on our private sector housing grants policy was presented to Cabinet and Council in April 2026 for adoption. Thanks go out to all those who have participated in the consultation exercise. The private sector housing grants policy was implemented on the 1st of June 2026 and focuses on support for vulnerable residents whose health is affected by poor housing conditions. Turning to health and wellbeing, we have commenced our new 3-year contract with Kent Public Health to deliver our 1U programme, with funding of £443,733 secured. The first quarter is nearly completed and is working well. Kent County Council commissioned ABL to deliver a single point of access for clients that was due to start on the 1st of April, but this has been delayed and we hope that it will be in place next month. Local health initiatives were recognised at the Making It Happen Community and Voluntary Awards last week, which was lovely to hear all the amazing work that local volunteers and community groups deliver for health across the district. The winners for the health and wellbeing category were presented their award by Dr. Hilary Jones, MBE. We currently have 2 Why Wait programmes running. One is online on a Thursday evening and the other is being held at Sevenoaks Leisure Centre on Tuesday mornings. There will be a further 12-week session being held in September, one online and the other one held on Wednesday morning in Swanley. On the 7th of July, there will be a pop-up session in Edenbridge, and this is for past participants so that the team can check in with those who attended the last 2 Why Wait programmes. Through the KCC Housing Support Fund, 7 boiler replacement applications were completed. Through the Warm Homes Local Grant, 17 households received 33 energy efficiency measures ranging from insulation to solar PV. A further 12 households are in the pipeline. And finally, the Hero Service continues to make a significant impact. It supported 133 households in the last financial year, resolving 189 issues at an early stage to prevent homelessness. The monthly Housing Community Hub continues to bring together partners such as Citizens Advice, Imago, CGL and DAVS, providing a genuine on-stop shop for residents. Themes this year have included the Housing Allocation Policy, World Homelessness Day, White Ribbon, the Housing Grants Consultation and Armed Forces. The team received a highly commended award from the Kent Housing Group for their partnership work on the hub. Chairman, that concludes my update. I want to place on record my thanks to our officers who continue to deliver exceptional results in an extremely challenging environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It certainly sounds like it's been a very busy time for all officers, and I know my paths have crossed with several of those events, and always very well supported and very much needed. Any questions of Councillor Cole? Nope, thank you. We move on to item number 7, referrals from Cabinet to the Audit Committee.
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. We move on to item number 8, the draft private sector housing enforcement policy 2026 to 2031, which seems miles away, doesn't it? 31. Alison, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the draft private sector housing enforcement policy to go out for consultation. Oh, sorry. This report presents the draft private sector housing enforcement policy to go out for consultation. The council aims to ensure that all properties let as residential homes across the Sevenoaks district, including those in private ownership, are safe, well managed and of a high standard. The Renters' Rights Act introduces new landlord legislation designed to make renting in the private sector fairer and safer. The private sector housing enforcement policy sets out what owners, landlords, agents and tenants can expect from the council in ensuring effective compliance with housing legislation. It explains how the council will uphold standards while minimising unnecessary burdens on the council, residents, landlords and businesses. The current policy was adopted in 2021, and the current policy details how the council will use its enforcement powers relating to legislation covering housing standards and issues regarding public health affecting poor housing conditions only, and doesn't apply to mobile and park homes. So we've now included that within the current new policy that's will go out for consultation. As set out in the housing strategy theme 4, healthy people, homes and places, the council's objective is to identify the most effective interventions to improve conditions in the private sector housing. To meet this objective, the council is working to improve the conditions of the homes let by private landlords, including taking enforcement action where necessary. For a 3-year period, 2025 to 2028, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government is providing new burdens funding to local housing authorities to help fund the costs of implementing and enforcing the Renters' Rights Act. The Ministry has made it clear its expectation that ongoing costs will be offset through income generated from civil penalties issued to landlords who breach relevant legislation, alongside fee income derived from the operation of the private rented sector database. The draft policy will go through a consultation process, surveys, meetings, and focus groups will be held with partners, stakeholders, members and customers to get their views between the 13th of July and the 21st of August. So the consultation will focus on the council's approach to enforcement in accordance with the mandatory guidance, whereby formal action is taken whenever a breach of the Renters' Rights Act landlord legislation has occurred. Appropriateness of the matrix of civil penalty fines, which have been set out according to the levels proposed in the Model Civil Penalty Fines Policy produced by the Association of Chief Environmental Health Officers. And the last question is whether a discount should be offered where there is a prompt payment of the civil penalty fine, as proposed again by the Association of Chief Environmental Health Officers Model Policy, and reflecting the current policy in other service areas. The risks that have been identified following areas of concern is the outcome of the consultation. We need to make sure that we include the formal processes within the policy in relation to the breach of landlord legislation, despite this being contrary to statutory guidance. To mitigate this risk, we will take advice if we don't have a policy that meets the legislation as to whether it's permissible or not. Currently, we work on a very informal basis before getting to formal, and that amount of informal interaction will have to change because of the requirement to issue the civil penalties. We also have to report on the civil penalties as and when they're issued, and we have to do a quarterly return. So again, the government is checking on us in relation to the civil penalties. Formal action not being taken against any breach of a landlord legislation, resulting in insufficient fine income being secured to fund the enforcement function of the private sector housing team long term. To mitigate this risk, we need to ensure that we provide sufficient funds if we're not doing it through civil penalties, if we're not getting the money from the government. Different private sector housing enforcement policies approaches being used across the emerging West Kent Unitary Authority. Although through the work that the team does through the Kent housing groups, the technical groups, they have adhered to the model that has been circulated, and we have taken some of that on board in relation to the policy that has been put together. So following the consultation and the analysis of the results, the timetable and final approval for the implementation will come back to the Advisory Committee on the 6th of October, Cabinet on the 20th of October and full council on the 1st of December. And once we've obviously got the policy adopted, procedures and processes will be reviewed to ensure that we're implementing it in accordance with the policy and legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Are there any questions? Councillor Stretfield.
Thank you, Chairman. Alison just touched on the thing that concerned me slightly when reading the papers is this is page 18, where it mentions the Sevenoaks Way. And clearly there is a discussion about how much informal action happens before civil penalties or we go to civil penalties, but I was nervous about a district bespoke way of doing business when we know that we are going to be amalgamating with, in all likelihood, 3 others who will be doing this in a non-Sevenoaks way, quite naturally. And how much effort, and I think Alison just did touch on it, how much effort was being done to coordinate how these policies are going to work, because they obviously cover the period of LGR. And how much what's not in this paper and hopefully will be in the paper that comes in October is how much confidence that the administration has with regard to the fines, that will they be able to cover the enforcement function that Alison has just talked about. We know that's how it's supposed to work, but we haven't got a sense from the paper and the explanation of the paper how much confidence the administration and others have got about about how effective that is going to be, and hopefully that'll come through on the consultation. Thanks.
Thank you. Alison, do you want to come back with that?
Oh, thank you. In relation to having a different Sevenoaks model, like I said, we have based it on the environmental model that has been shared across Kent. So again, West Kent are looking at that. So I think it's just the fact that we won't be able to do as much informal liaison like we do now. We'll have to have an initial meeting, explain what needs to be done, give a tighter time period in which it needs to be done before we issue the civil penalty. Again, the civil penalties are based on a model that, again, the whole of Kent through the Kent Technical Group are using to take forward. So I think everybody will be in a similar position where currently our policies are probably very different in relation to the civil penalties we've got in each of our policies. Sorry, I've forgotten if there was another part to the question. Oh, in relation to the number of civil penalties, again, I'm not sure I can estimate that, because I think we haven't got rogue landlords like you might have in other areas within Sevenoaks. Not that are reported to us for us to take the necessary action, but whether the change in the way we do things will generate the income. But I think it's difficult to say what the issues will be, because some of these now relate to how they start up a tenancy. Have they given the right papers to a tenant, which weren't in place before? Now, what we don't know, because we wouldn't normally be monitoring that, how many of those cases might have been done incorrectly. So that is something that we will then be looking at. And I think once we get the database in, which could not possibly be till the end of the year, we can have a more proactive approach in relation to this, making sure all the landlords have got everything in place. We can do more publicity in relation to how things should be done. But I don't think we're in a position to say there's going to be 100 civil penalties at 7,000, 10 at 40,000. I don't think we're in that position. And from the cases we've dealt with so far to date, the ones that are reported to us, the ones we know about and the ones we can deal with, we haven't had to take that prosecution or the civil penalty action, unfortunately. So I don't think if it was, will the generation of civil penalties pay for the service? Probably not.
Thank you, Alison. Any other questions? Right. If there are no further questions, the recommendation is to approve the draft of the private sector housing enforcement policy for a public consultation, subject to any required amendment. Can I have a show of hands for that, please? Thank you very much. If you move on your papers to page 141, and it's item number 9, the tenancy strategy 2026 to 2031. And that is over to Alison again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report prevents the review and draft of the tenancy strategy 2026 to 2031. Under the Localism Act in 2011, all local authorities are required to prepare and publish a tenancy strategy. The strategy provides guidance to registered providers on the types of tenancies they should grant, the circumstances in which they should be offered, and the approach to tenancy renewal and termination. The tenancy strategy helps the council and registered providers prioritise households in greatest need, reduce under-occupation, support downsizing, ensure adapted properties are used appropriately. This ensures that stock is allocated and managed in a way that maximises its social value. The Renters' Rights Act registered providers have regard to these changes when reviewing and implementing their tenancy policies, ensuring alignment with the new requirements relating to improved tenant information standards, strengthened rights to challenge decisions, enhanced property conditions, obligations and updated processes for tenancy variations and redress. The Council will continue to monitor the impact of the Act and work collaboratively with registered providers to update the tenancy strategy, ensuring that local practice remains compliant, fair and responsive to the evolving national regulatory framework. In addition, the Renters' Rights Act will not apply to flexible tenancies until a formal direction has been issued by the housing regulator and consultation has taken place on the tenancy standards required for implementation. Now, this is looking like it might be September 2027 before flexible tenancies are removed. So therefore, this strategy will need to be reviewed at that point because there will no longer be registered providers will no longer be able to offer a flexible tenancy. And I know that West Kent are starting to look at this already. So in relation to the tenancy strategy, we provide the guidance. Each registered provider has to have a tenancy policy and they have to have regard to our tenancy strategy. So the draft tenancy strategy will go through a consultation process, surveys, meetings and focus groups, and will be held with councillors, partners, stakeholders and residents to get their views between the 13th of July and 21st of August. Following the consultation analysis of the results, the timetable and final approval for the implementation of the tenancy strategy, it will come back to Housing and Health Advisory Committee on the 6th of October and Cabinet on the 20th of October. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alison. Are there any questions? Councillor Stretfield, you didn't disappoint.
Very briefly to say thank you to Alison for responding at my questions from the last minute, but I think it's worth telling the committee that over the course of this, there were several different sets of figures about how much affordable housing was available and when it had become available. And Alison's very kindly offered to send me and the committee a breakdown of those figures, just because I got very confused about who was able to provide what under what timescales. But thanks.
Chair, may I interrupt? That relates to the next report, not this one. That's the homeless review and draft homeless strategy. So just to clarify, Councillor Stretfield picked out what we tried to show throughout those documents is the number of social housing, number of affordable homes delivered. But with affordable homes, that includes affordable rent, social rent and shared ownership. Then again, we've tried to show that there's rural letting schemes that have come forward, who's provided them, whether it's a registered provider or Quercus, and then again, how they've been funded through Section 106. So I can see that there could be a bit of confusion. So what I've agreed to do, as Councillor Stretfield has said, is provide a 10-year delivery plan with all that information in one table. So it's a lot easier to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, Alison didn't have enough time from 3 o'clock onwards today to provide that information. So I'm not sure why, Alison, really. But thank you very much for agreeing to put that in a concise form for all members. Are there any other questions? Right, then we're asked to approve the draft of the tenancy strategy for public consultation subject to any required amendment. Can I have a show of hands, please? oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the one above, sorry, to consider the draft tenancy strategy and the proposed timescale for the consultation and implementation. Sorry, I'm miles away. Show of hands. Still the same show of hands. Thank you very much. We move on to item number 10, the homeless and rough sleeper strategy review and draft strategy for 2026 to 2031 and the action plan. This is on page 153 and I look to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This report, this report presents the review and draft of the Homelessness and Rough Sleep Strategy 2026 to 2031. Subject to approval, this will go out to public consultation between 13th of July and 21st of August of this year, before being presented to full council for adoption. Local housing authorities have a statutory duty to publish a homelessness and rough sleep strategy every 5 years. The existing strategy was adopted by Council on the 21st of February 2023, and this report brings forward a review together with a proposed new 5-year strategy and associated action plan. It reflects the latest national policy context, including the Government's National Plan to End Homelessness, the Homelessness Reduction Act 2017, the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, and the phased implementation of the Renters' Rights Act 2025. Our priorities remain focused on 3 connected themes: prevention, in delivering a high quality advice, early intervention and targeted pathways for those most at risk; intervention, working with partners to tackle rough sleeping, improve temporary accommodation and coordinate responses for people with complex needs; and sustainable solutions, so expanding move on and rehousing options and providing support that helps people to maintain their tenancies. Progress will be reviewed through annual monitoring of the action plan and assessed against both local performance measures and the national plan's headline metrics, including reductions in long-term rough sleeping, fewer households entering and remaining in temporary accommodation, and improved sustained housing outcomes. As a council, we continue to face challenges. These include the rising cost of living, contributing to financial insecurity, rent arrears, and a higher risk of homelessness; ongoing pressure on temporary accommodation and the need to reduce emergency placements whilst improving the standards and value for money; private rented sector affordability, including reduced numbers of properties at or below the local housing allowance rate; and increasing presentations linked to domestic abuse and the need for sufficient safe accommodation and specialist support. The draft Homelessness and Rough Sleep Strategy 2026 to 2031 will go through a consultation process. Surveys, meetings and focus groups will be held with councillors, partners, stakeholders and residents to get their views between the 13th of July and the 21st of August. The consultation will concentrate on the following areas: gathering feedback on the proposed updates to the strategy and how well they reflect the priorities of the National Plan for Homelessness and the Renters' Rights Act 2025. Clarity of actions, so reviewing whether the proposed actions are clear, deliverable and appropriately targeted. The suitability of priorities, in seeking views on whether the identified priorities address local needs and challenges effectively. The effectiveness of measures, considering whether those measures outlined will support the prevention of homelessness and the reduction of rough sleeping across the district. The identification of any gaps and inviting comments on gaps, emerging issues or areas requiring further action. And finally, partnership working, so gathering views on opportunities to strengthen collaboration with partners and community organisations. Following the consultation and the analysis of the results, the timetable and final approval for the implementation of the strategy has been set out, but it will be brought back. Following the consultation, it will be brought back to this committee on the 6th of October before going to Cabinet on the 20th of October and then full council on the 1st of December. That concludes my introduction.
That's it, I'm back. Thank you very much, Stephen, for that. Are there any questions? I've got 2 hands. I think Councillor Thorn, Oh no, they're both pointing at each other. So Councillor Thornton, do you want to go first?
Happy to. Just a general comment on the consultation timings. When we've coincided with summer holidays, certainly on planning consultations, we've always chosen to perhaps do a little bit more time. I notice this runs for 5 weeks and 5 days. I don't know what's obligatory, but it is totally coinciding. We, as a council, we've received criticism in the past for completely coinciding with summer holidays. I was wondering if you've given that any thought and whether this is any longer or not, or whether it's less relevant because the people we're targeting are less to be likely to be impacted by school summer holidays.
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. It's a question that Alison's already answered for me, but would you like to give Councillor Thornton the answer?
Yes, well, we have considered that. Sorry, we have considered that, but it's making sure that we can obviously get back to committee with the analysis to go through it. We will make sure that we've got the survey. We will do lots of reminders. We'll go through Kent Home Choice in relation to getting in contact with residents. And I think we'll do 3-member events and we'll do the focus group. So I think as long as we keep on top of it and keep reminding people to complete the surveys, we will be able to get through this. We sat yesterday and went through the 3 lots of consultation and how we've planned it all out. So we just hope that everyone can attend. If not, we'll have to move things around. So once it's approved by Cabinet, we can get the invites out. And if we see that there's less people attending particular events, we can try and move them within that time period.
And is it the statutory time? You haven't extended it, have you?
The minimum time you can give is 6 weeks. So it's just under 6 weeks with the weekend. So
I share your concerns. I know we have been criticised. So I think a good publicity, social media and whatever we can to get that message out. And I know from my previous days as clerk, some of the councils don't meet, you know, so if you're catching councils, you've got to catch them early, or, you know, many of them don't meet in August.
But if it's 6 weeks, why don't we do it to the Monday, rather than finishing on Friday the 21st? I mean, the chance of getting more responses possibly if people got time at the weekend, but actually I feel more confident we actually hit what is required of us, which is 6 weeks. At the moment, the dates we're stating are only 5 weeks and 5 days.
oh, sorry, it's working now. We'll change all the 3 reports that they all finish on the Monday before they go to Cabinet. Oh, sorry.
We're having a problem with our microphones today. Thank you, Alison. Councillor Manston.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the SWEP protocol. I know that the low range of temperature is 0, but I didn't see anything about the higher, you know, we're in this extreme period of heat at the moment. I think it's supposed to be 25 degrees when the SWEP protocol kicks in, but I didn't see it in the report, so I just wondered where that is placed. Thanks.
Stephen.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, we do. The SWEP protocol was updated last summer to incorporate extremes in the other way. So in higher temperatures, we do actually currently have it's active, had it active this week since Monday due to the forecast amber alert, which then obviously moved to a red alert. So during this period, we are reaching out to visiting all of our known rough sleepers and any other rough sleepers we become aware of to provide them with support packs, which includes sun cream, advice leaflets on keeping safe in hot weather. So although obviously it hasn't been reflected in this report, the protocol itself, it does have reflect what we do during summer period. So.
Can you hear me? It was flashing for a while. Thank you. That's good to hear that that's in action at the moment. I was just wondering whether there's an actual number, like a degrees where it kicks in, like the 0 degrees. Thank you.
So we've activated it based around the Amber Alert. So when the temperatures get to a level where the government issues an Amber Alert for the area for a period of at least 3 days, then we'll activate it under that threshold.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Stratfield.
So what caught my eye was the risk against insufficient staff resources and funding to meet the customer demand for the service. I just wondered there's some mitigations there, but they come from external funding. I just wondered whether we were going to be ready for it.
Stephen.
In respect of external funding, we have had a 3-year allocation now of our homeless prevention, rough sleeper and domestic abuse grant funding. So there's always a risk when we were only getting 12 months at a time. So obviously you can recruit somebody for 12 months and then you might have to end their contract. So all the time we've got the external funding for a 3-year period where we were enabled to plan and make sure that we've got sufficient resources. But when we come near to the end of that, if we then don't know what our allocation is, because we have both core budget and external funding where we get different roles in, because for instance, we've got, sorry, a housing reviews and visiting officer, which is really helping with our family and friends in evictions, because from recently she started in March, didn't she? And since then, she's managed to stop 22 people having to go into temporary accommodation through the support that's been provided, the incentives for the family to maintain them at home until we can take them through the homeless prevention route or into permanent accommodation. Sorry, my throat's gone funny.
Did you want to come back?
Thank you. And one more, just what I don't think is in here is how far we're again working with the other districts and boroughs who might come part of the LGR over the timeframe of this policy, and whether this policy converges with what they're doing as well.
So I think we're all at different stages in relation to the delivery of our homeless strategies. Tunbridge Wells are ahead of us. They've already gone out to consultation in relation to the fact that we've all now got to meet the national homelessness and rough strategy plans. And there are metrics in there that we've all got to reach. All the Kent local authorities are reviewing their strategies, so they're all in alignment with that. So therefore, there shouldn't be that much difference, apart from there will be differences in relation to, like, for instance, we've been dealing with family and friends. We've got an increase of domestic abuse. So we've got specific actions that we need to take for that, where the other West Kent local authorities might not have those the same ones, but they could have a different cohort. They could have a lot of care leavers. So there will be different parts to the strategy. But overall, the metrics that drive these and making sure that we're all meeting the national plan will all be the same for all the West Kent local authorities.
Are there any other questions? Then the recommendation, the recommendation to Health and Housing Committee is to consider the draft homelessness and rough sleeper strategy and the proposed timescale for the consultation and the implementation. Can I have a show of hands that we're all happy with that? Thank you very much. We move on to item 11, the private landlord cooperation and supported downsizing scheme. That's on page 239. And I look back to Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents a review of the private landlord cooperation and supported downsizing scheme, which was proposed by Councillor Waterton as an option for consideration at the previous committee meeting. See Appendix 1 to the report. Officers have considered the option and the findings are set out in the report. The key findings, there is clear demand for supported downsizing. There is evidence that a number of private rented sector tenants are living in homes that no longer meet their needs, example, under occupation, affordability pressures and mobility issues. A structured scheme may help these households move in a planned and supported way. Potential to free up private rented sector homes by assisting tenants to downsize larger private rented sector properties could be released for families in housing need, helping to ease local pressure on temporary accommodation and homelessness services. Operational feasibility. Officers advise the scheme is not deliverable within existing structures and extra resources will be required to provide the defined support pathway, dedicated officer time to manage the private sector housing landlords and registered provider engagement and tenant transitions, and incentives for landlords to join into a scheme. Financial consideration, additional funding would be required for an additional officer to manage the scheme and incentives for landlords to take part in the scheme. Risks and mitigations. The key risks include limited landlord participation, insufficient suitable smaller properties and tenant reluctance to move and give up their secure tenancies. The barriers to the scheme are summarised. The limited availability of suitable smaller private rented sector homes. There is currently a shortage. This makes it unlikely that tenants wishing to downsize could be matched effectively. There is a low likelihood of landlord participation, as they're under no obligation to cooperate, and current market conditions favour landlords, reducing incentives to participate in a structured downsizing scheme. We currently use our landlords forums to work and engage with landlords to help us to house our homeless applicants, which again is, we offer incentives through that, but there's only so much limited funding we have through our homeless prevention and, well, I won't say the whole name again, but our external homeless prevention grant funding. It will be a high operational resource requirement. So delivering the scheme would require dedicated officer time for tenant support, landlord liaison, property sourcing and move coordination. And current staffing levels don't allow for this without additional funding. The scheme would require upfront investment, but the expected benefits, such as freeing up larger private rented homes, are uncertain and may not justify the cost. The limited impact on social housing movement. While the scheme aims to create movement within the social housing system, the indirect benefits are likely to be minimal due to the small number of private rented sector tenants who would be willing and eligible to downsize. Tenants' reluctance and vulnerability. Many tenants who are under-occupying or struggling with affordability may be vulnerable, risk-averse or unwilling to move without strong guarantees, which the scheme cannot provide. I've set out in point 9 the difference between a registered provider and a private sector landlord tenancies, because while the Renters' Rights Act has built-in lifetime tenancies for the private rented sector, there are still a number of differences that in relation to a secure tenancy as a social tenant. In respect of rent increases, the government regulates, the housing regulator governs social housing increases by CPI plus 1%, where a private sector landlord could increase the rent to meet a market rent. So again, there could be an issue there in relation to affordability. Repairs, again, there's repair schemes within social housing. I won't go into all of that because obviously you've got the report and you've had a chance to read it. So the review identifies no statutory requirement for the council, to establish or operate a scheme. Implementing such a scheme, however, would introduce a range of legal responsibilities, including compliance with housing standards, safeguarding duties, data sharing requirements, and potential liabilities arising from landlord-tenant arrangements facilitated by the council. The review demonstrates that the scheme doesn't present a sufficiently strong case for progression at this time. While the concept aimed to increase housing flexibility and support tenants wishing to downsize, the evidence indicates that the practical, financial and strategic barriers currently outweigh the potential benefits. In the context of existing priorities, resources constraints and the availability of more effective housing interventions, the scheme doesn't align strongly with our current objectives. Continuing to pursue it would divert officer capacity from higher impact initiatives already underway. For these reasons, the committee is advised to note the findings of the review and agree that no further action should be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I'd like to first of all thank Councillor Waterton for putting this forward as a proposal, because I think it's always good that the council listens to our members and our residents, and we put forward the ideas so that the council can not always go with the norm and look into things that are new. So thank you, Councillor Warnton, for doing that. Have you got a question for Alison? I'm assuming you have.
Not a question, but just a statement more than anything. Would you like me to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I would like to thank members and officers for considering the proposal set out on pages 247 to 249. The aim of this is simple: to ensure people are housed in the most appropriate homes within the areas they already live, while making better use of the housing stock already available. By supporting residents to move in a coordinated way, one move can create another and help relieve pressure across the system. This is particularly important now, as many private renters have already been evicted following recent changes in the sector. We are already seeing the impact of this through increased pressure on the housing register and temporary accommodation, and it underlines the need for practical solutions we can implement quickly. I noted that the report on pages 239 to 245 suggests that this type of scheme is not currently in place. However, the approach I'm proposing is different. It is tenant-led, locally driven, and designed to work in rural, close-knit communities like Crockenhill, where residents know each other and are willing to cooperate. I also note that some of the concerns set out in the report appear to be based on expectations of how a scheme might operate, whereas this proposal is grounded in a real tenant-led example with willing participants already in place. Importantly, this is not just an idea. I've already have a potential chain in mind involving 3 local households, each with different needs and situations, who are all willing participants and prepared to work together. One privately renting household who has received notice as their landlord wishes to sell. One elderly private renter needing smaller social housing on a ground floor, who is on the housing register. The elderly resident's landlord would be prepared to waive the notice of the elderly resident in order to facilitate another long-term rent. By coordinating those moves, we could help each household into more suitable accommodation while also creating movement beyond those homes and unlocking wider opportunities across the district. Given that we already have a workable real-life example, I would strongly encourage members to support testing this approach through a small pilot. This would allow us to deliver immediate local benefits while assessing whether it could be rolled out more widely as part of our response to current housing pressures. I would welcome the committee's support in progressing this pilot and for this to be recorded as a request for officers to work with me to bring it back to committee. Trying this approach now with willing participants and a clear opportunity would be far more constructive than doing nothing in the face of the pressures we are already seeing. Thank you.
Alison, do you want to comment on that any further? Or Sarah?
So can I just check with that then? Is 2 of them are in the private rented sector. One is in social housing and the one in social housing wishes to downsize?
No, both are in private rented accommodation. One, the family have received notice to leave. There is another lady who is on the housing register. She wishes to downsize from her 2-bed private accommodation to ground floor social housing and leave her 2-bedroom property. The family wish to move into the property as they have strong ties in Crockenhill in the community. And the landlord, who has been a landlord for the elderly resident for many years, is happy for the younger family to move into the private accommodation to help accommodate his long-standing tenant, and then she can move into social housing, as I've already started receiving evidence that she needs a ground floor, 1-bedroom housing in the area.
Okay, that's helpful. So has she been allocated social housing then through our allocations policy?
All I know is she's on the housing register, and I believe that the information that you have is out of date and her circumstances are changed, and she needs to be housed more appropriately.
Can I suggest then is probably what she needs to do is actually contact our housing allocations team to update the information on our housing register application. Where you have to be really careful is if you think of there's 1,200 people on the housing register at the moment, and I know this is probably a bone of contention for all of you here, to be fair, is just how through our allocations policy, which we adopt, it's how we allocate our housing, and it's prioritized. So we just have to be careful that there may be other people, if there's a particular home that she's interested in, is she will still sit within, based on her housing register application, there will be other people that may have a greater need than her who will be able to secure social housing quicker. So my suggestion for her, if it is something that she wants to do, provide us with that additional information, because if she wants a review of her banding or things like that, that's something that we can do, which is probably a better way to deal with the person that wants to get into social housing.
Thank you. I've already offered to assist her, because the problem was that she wasn't able to provide that information. She wasn't aware how it needed to be evidenced, and so I've assisted her with this. So the housing department should have that information soon, and then she would obviously be more eligible to be moved and housed more appropriately.
I think we've got into a specific case there. So I think, and she's quite, if she can't manage to do it herself and she gives you the authority to act on her behalf, then I think that's a good point to be able to liaise with the housing team. Councillor Thornton.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to compliment Councillor Waterton as well, and also this committee for actually bringing something like this through, because I don't think it happens very often at advisory committees. So it's really good to see stuff that's happening at ground where it's coming through. At the same time, I appreciate what the officers are saying as far as resources concerned. Having read this, there's clearly something in here. I think the timings are not good because of LGR. My suggestions, and also this lady of yours who's looking for accommodation, the statistics that you were provided at your last meeting regarding waiting lists, there's a 14-month waiting list at the moment. So that would be a potential jam in the system as well. But there's clearly something in this. And my concern is that it might get lost in the future. And how can we find a way to make sure that it's got some legs in it at a time when it will land better? Because the research that's been done here is clearly saying there's something here. And perhaps a snazzier title. The Waterton downsizing scheme or something along those lines is a bit of a mouthful at the moment, as the PD, whatever it is, or long scheme. But it's just trying to find a way to make sure it's not lost in the grand scheme of things, particularly as we move to LGR, because I think there is legs in this, and it's landed well with people when they've looked at downsizing. I don't know if Sarah's got a comment that she can.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, we had a conversation earlier just around how you could almost present something. It's not quite oven ready, I think, for a new West Kent unitary, but what you could do if you so wished as a committee, you could make a recommendation that it would be revisited either the same time next year in terms of Well, actually, yep, because we will have our shadow authority in place then, and obviously meetings will still exist through this forum as well as sort of making decisions through there. So whether you will actually get something which will be approved then, but it kind of can keep something on the agenda so that it's then considered as part of maybe a West Kent model. Because I think the one thing you do need with this is if you're going to look at, I mean, Alison mentioned this, but if you're looking at sort of landlord liaison, a tenancy, landlord liaison officer, tenancy support officer, and someone that can do compliance, plus you're looking at incentives for landlords, you've got to make it value for money and you've got to make it stack up. Because if you know you're only maybe going to get, I don't know, 5 or 5 properties that are exchanged in a year, it's just not going to stack up in terms of, but just there is no budget unless members have got a brilliant idea of how we could find that, then I am all ears. So you could just put it forward as a recommendation to be considered next year and it could be carried forward onto the work plan.
Councillor Manston.
Thank you, Chair. So I agree that there are legs to it, and I think that I think it's really important to note is maybe it is a newer way of thinking and working, but actually it does actually exist already in 4 councils across Kent. So we've got Ashford, Dartford, Gravesham, and Medway. Already offer a downsizing scheme, and West Kent Housing Association also do. So I think that does speak to, you know, that it is working in some areas. I appreciate, you know, the work in the report, and I don't want to question the element of resources that are required, but I feel like a lot of the work, I feel like it's about support, a lot of it, you know, a big part of it is about support. And I think that knowing what a good job that the team does, I feel like a lot of it we probably do in a way with regards to the advice that we give. For example, the Gravesham service is called Holding Hands because it is about that supporting, as opposed to, you know, as opposed to an extra element of significant resource, as far as I can see. I know there are other elements of it, but I think also the other part of it is just joining up those kind of elements that we're doing. So we're working with private landlords, we're working with social rentals, and it's about just connecting that work, as far as I can see. And so, yeah, I would like to consider the case that Councillor Waterton suggested. I also had someone contact me just this week about rental opportunities, and I think that there's opportunity. You know, there are things that I could just forward them on to the team, obviously, but I don't think that connected, joined up approach is there yet. So, yeah, I'd really support looking into it further. Thank you.
Chair, could I just respond to that? Sorry. We do know downsizing schemes work because we did have our changing spaces officer, and we worked with West Kent and Places for People, and we had to have an independent officer that just purely did those changing spaces moves between social tenancies, not social and private rented sector. And this is where the difficulty is, which is what I've tried to lay out in the report. So downsizing does work, but you do need resources to do it. And we only stopped doing the changing spaces because West Kent saw that it was working so well, they decided to do it in-house themselves. So yes, West Kent does do downsizing. I know Ashford does, they do it in their own stock, but they don't do it across 10 years. Now, I don't know about Gravesham. I can't say whether they do there, but I wasn't aware because they've got their own stock. So I would presume, again, that is downsizing. The other thing we did as well with changing spaces, we had incentives to incentivize. But again, we haven't got the budget like we had then to be able to do it. Now, we did that to try and free up properties within the social sector on the housing register to move people down to smaller properties. So family accommodation came up, but it's the difficulty going between the 2 tenures and the security that the tenant is losing from going from a secure tenancy to a private rented sector tenancy. So it's not as simple as just joining them together. You've also got to think about what that tenant is losing. But all those cases had to be handheld through the whole process. And we had to have a dedicated officer for that. We couldn't do that within existing resources. And this is even one step even further, making it more complex in relation to the 2 different tenures. So we couldn't do that within existing resources. Sorry. Just one other thing. Across Kent, they were thinking of looking at a right sizing programme just to see if we could combine, but this was more to do with social, but that currently isn't going forward. But what I was going to do, because obviously writing this report, was going to suggest, could they look at that when they look at the possibility of doing it on a Kent-wide basis. Now, if that comes up again, I will put that into the mix for them to look at cross tenures, but currently that isn't going forward, but I will keep that on the back burner and add that in if appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Manston, did you want to say something else?
Thank you. Yeah, if you don't mind, just quickly, because you mentioned the real complexity being about it being cross tenure, and I just wondered, like, is there something we could do just within the social housing element then, like, to reduce it a bit more? Ask the question.
Well, we've already put the idea out there and the innovative way of doing it, which is why West Kent have now taken it on board and doing it themselves. So we've already put it out there as an idea, because we know downsizing works, and they're now funding that through there, because we haven't got the funding for it either. So we tried to put an innovation in place to help us, which it did. It was 32 households that managed to move. And now, because it works so well, they've got their own dedicated officers to do it.
Councillor Thornton.
I remember the work we did very well, and it was going back some time, and as you say, it picked up. But we're not just West Kent. What about the other suppliers, housing associations? Thank you very much indeed. As far as incentivising them, are they doing similar things, or?
Most registered providers or authorities with stock do have incentive schemes, because they're always trying to make the best use of their own stock. So they might all be different, but they will offer an amount of money to help people to downsize, which then helps with moving and possible change in furniture, because they've moved from a bigger house to a smaller house. And then they'll have somebody that will support them with, like, electric, utilities, everything to set up in their new home.
Councillor Waterton.
I really think we should use this opportunity just to consider, testing this and gauging whether the officer workload increases, because I'm not going to identify anything about the residents that I have in mind, but they are all potentially going to have a greater need on the homeless or homeless register, or needing housing, because the family can't secure private accommodation. They keep getting picked to the post because it's so rare now, due to the changes in the way that households can be given notice to leave. And the elderly lady has known mobility issues and needs 1-story ground floor accommodation. So, potentially we are killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and completely simplifying this need, or this way of going about doing things. And as I said, this is a tenant-led initiative, and already, you know, I've helped with a lot of the groundwork, and so as far as I can see, you know, we've got, you know, people that are willing to cooperate, and a landlord that is very interested in you know, a long tenancy, and assisting his long-term resident who has mobility issues, and you know, it's a plan that would work.
Councillor Walton, I don't disagree that you
Yeah.
think you've got a good case, because I know us, you know, there are other members that have probably got cases in their wards where they could see it really working. But we have a problem if we put somebody in that are a lower, not qualification, what am I looking at? Lower on the lists than somebody else with a higher need and a greater need. So we do have to go through that allocations team at the moment with this. And I would recommend strongly that you talk to the team and get your banding reassessed for one of them, and then they can go from there on this one. But I would say to members, we were asked to receive and note the report, but are we minded that it should come back, that it isn't lost in the system, and that we revisit it when there's a shadow council in place in June of 2027? Are members quite happy that we say we will receive and note the report and revisit June 2027? Could I have a show of hands for that? Thank you. Thank you. We move on to item number 12, the work plan, which, if you were like me, you looked at it and thought, my goodness me, I'm going to bring my sleeping bag for that one. But Sarah, I think we've looked at this a little bit more closely, haven't we? So that we give every item its full, timely allocated place, and rightly so. So can you go through that with us, please?
Happy to, Chair. So after the 6th of October meeting, there is another meeting on the 14th of Jan 2027. And so on the January meeting, we're going to move from the October meeting, the supported housing strategy, the Gypsy and Traveller allocation policy for Romany Way, and the empty home strategy. So there will just be 5 items at the October meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think that gives us a better balance of items to discuss. So that's the work plan for the 6th of October. And just so that members note, 14th of January 2027 for your diaries, and the 13th of April, and time will fly by. And with that, at 8:07, I declare the Health and Housing and Health